Tintagel, Tintagel, or Trevena, is a civil parish and village situated on the Atlantic coast of Cornwall, England, United Kingdom. The population of the parish was 1,820 people, and the area of the parish is 4,281 acres. The parish population decreased to 1,727 at the 2011 census. An electoral ward also exists extending inland to Otterham. The population of this ward at the same census was 3,990. The village and nearby Tintagel Castle are associated with the legends surrounding King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. The village has, in recent times, become attractive to day trippers and tourists, and is one of the most visited places in Britain. Toponymy. Toponymists have had difficulty explaining the origin of Tintagel. The probability is that it is Norman French, as the Cornish of the 13th century would have lacked the soft I. If it is Cornish, then Dun would mean fort. Oliver Paddle proposes Tintagel, meaning narrow place, in his book on place names. There is a possible cognate in the Channel Islands named Tintagel, but that still leaves the question subject to doubt. The name first occurs in Geoffrey of Monmouth's Historia Regum Britanniae as Tintagel, implying pronunciation with a hard sound as in modern English girl. But in Layamons Brut, in early Middle English, the name is rendered as Tintagel. The letter I in this spelling implies a soft consonant like modern English J. The second part of the name would be pronounced approximately as Agiel would be in modern French. An oft-quoted Celtic etymology in the Oxford Dictionary of English place names accepts the view of Paddle that the name is from Cornish *din, meaning fort, and *tagel, meaning neck, throat, constriction, narrow. Tintagel, Trevena and Bossiny. The modern-day village of Tintagel was always known as Trevena until the post office started using Tintagel as the name in the mid-19th century. The village also features the old post office, which dates from the 14th century. It became a post office during the 19th century, and is now listed Grade I and owned by the National Trust. Arthurian legends. In Geoffrey of Monmouth's Historia Regum Britanniae, Gaulois, Duke of Cornwall, puts his wife Igraine in Tintagel while he's at war. Merlin disguised Uther Pendragon as Gaulois so that Uther could enter Tintagel and impregnate Igraine while pretending to be Gaulois. Uther and Igraine's child was King Arthur. Tintagel is also used as a locus for the Arthurian mythos by the poet Alfred Lord Tennyson in the poem Idylls of the King. Algernon Charles Swinburne's Tristram of Lyonesse is a literary version of the Tristan and Isolde legend in which some events are set at Tintagel. Thomas Hardy's The Famous Tragedy of the Queen of Cornwall at Tintagel in Lyonesse, a one-act play which was published in 1923, is another version of the same legend with events set at Tintagel. History. In Norman times a small castle was established at Bossiny, probably before the Domesday Survey of 1086. Bossiny and Trevena were established as a borough in 1253 by Richard, 1st Earl of Cornwall. In Domesday Book there are certainly two manors in this parish. Bossiny was held from the monks of Bodmin by the Earl of Cornwall. There was land for 6 ploughs and 30 acres of pasture. The monks of Bodmin held Trevena themselves. There was land for 8 ploughs and 100 acres of pasture. Tintagel was one of the 17 antiqua minaria of the Duchy of Cornwall. The parish feast traditionally celebrated at Tintagel was the 19th of October, the feast day of St. Denis, patron of the chapel at Trevena. The market hall and the site of the fair were near the chapel. The borough of Boston was given the right to send 2 MPs to Parliament c. 1552 and continued to do so until 1832 when its status as a borough was abolished. The villages of Trevena and Boston were until the early 20th century separated by fields along Boston Road. The Tithe Commissioner's Survey was carried out in 1840–41 and recorded the area of the parish as 4,280 acres, of which arable and pasture land was 3,200 acres. The land owned by the largest landowner, Lord Warncliffe, amounted to 1,814 acres, and there was 125 acres of glebe land. Precise details of the size and tenure of every piece of land are given. Sidney Madge did research into the history of the parish and compiled a manuscript records of Tintagel in 1945. On the 6th of July 1979, Tintagel was briefly subject to national attention when an RAF Hawker Hunter fighter aircraft crashed into the village following an engine malfunction. The unusual incident caused significant damage and consternation, but no deaths. Trevena is the largest of the other settlements in the parish, which include Trethevey, Trebarworth, Tregatta, Trenally and Trewarmott. Archaeology and architecture. The Ravenna cosmography of around 700 makes reference to Pura Coronavis, a fort-walled settlement of the Cornwall. The location is unidentified, but Tintagel and Cornwall have both been suggested. Excavations. Major excavations beginning with C.A. Raleigh Radford's work in the 1930s on and around the site of the 12th century castle have revealed that Tintagel Headland was the site of a high-status Celtic monastery or a princely fortress and trading settlement dating to the 5th and 6th centuries. In the period immediately following the withdrawal of the Romans from Britain, finds of Mediterranean oil and wine jars show that sub-Roman Britain was not the isolated outpost it was previously considered to be, for an extensive trade in high-value goods was taking place at the time with the Mediterranean region. Finds from the excavations are preserved at the Royal Cornwall Museum in Truro. In 1998, excavations discovered the Otterham stone, which has added to Tintagel's Arthurian lore. Although historians do not believe the inscription refers to King Arthur, 2 seasons of excavation work were undertaken in Tintagel churchyard in the early 1990s. Antiquities. The largest of the Bronze Age barrows is at the highest point in the parish, Kingdom.The. Another is at Menadue, and there are a number of others along the cliffs. In the Iron Age there were probably fortifications at Willow Park and Barras Head, and in and Trenally. 2 of the Roman milestones found in Cornwall are at Tintagel. The later one was found in the walls of the churchyard in 1889 and is preserved in the church. The inscription can be read as MPCG Val Lic Listen, which would refer to the Emperor Licinius. There are many other relics of antiquity to be found here, such as the so-called King Arthur's footprint on the island and a carved rock from Starra Park which has been placed outside the Sir James Smith School at Dark Lane, Camelford. Rodney Castleton has written about these as Bronze Age ritual objects. King Arthur's footprint is a hollow in the rock at the highest point of Tintagel Island's southern side. It is not entirely natural, having been shaped by human hands at some stage. It may have been used for the inauguration of kings or chieftains, as the site is known to have a long history stretching back to the Dark Ages. The name is probably a 19th century invention by the castle guide. Stone crosses, of which there are 2, have both been moved from their original positions. The plainer of the 2 was described under Bosony. Nat's cross, which was found at Trevena and then moved to the Warncliffe Arms Hotel at Trevena, is finely carved. The inscription can be read as Ailna. fecit hanc crucem pro anima suet. The name of this man is Saxon. Notable secular buildings. Tintagel Primary School was built at Trevena in 1914 to replace the old church school and has been extended since. Those who go on to a comprehensive school attend Sir James Smith's School, Camelford. The gift house was purchased by the trustees of Tintagel Women's Institute in 1923 from Catherine Johnson, not donated as previously thought. It adjoins the old post office. Vicarage. The former vicarage was built in the early 17th century and substantial additions were made in the late 18th and mid-19th centuries. In the grounds is Fontevraud Chapel and a columbarium which is one of the best preserved in Cornwall. In 2008 the Diocese of Truro decided to acquire new accommodation for future vicars and to sell the vicarage. However, the site and gleblands were the home of the vicars as early as the mid-13th century when the benefice came into the hands of the Abbey of Fontevraud in Anjou, France. King Arthur's Hall. King Arthur's Hall at Trevena is a substantial building of the early 1930s. It was built for custard powder manufacturer F.T. Glasscock as the headquarters of the Fellowship of the Knights of the Round Table, behind Trevena House. A variety of Cornish stones are used in the construction and the 73 stained glass windows illustrating the Arthurian tales are by Veronica Wall. There are several paintings of scenes from the life of King Arthur by William Hatherell. In 1927, the Order of the Fellowship of the Knights of the Round Table was formed in Britain by Frederick Thomas Glasscock to promote Christian ideals and Arthurian notions of medieval chivalry. Glasscock was resident at Tintagel and responsible for the building of King Arthur's Hall. The hall is now used as a Masonic hall, and is home to four Masonic bodies: King Arthur Lodge No. 7134, which was warranted on the 13th of November 1951. St. Benedict Lodge No. 9226, which was consecrated on the 30th of May 1987. King Arthur Royal Arch Chapter No. 7134, which was consecrated on the 31st of March 1962. Tintagel Castle Lodge of Mark Master Masons No. 1800, which was consecrated on the 23rd of April 1999. Churches and chapels. Tintagel Parish Church. The Tintagel Parish Church has been Anglican since the English Reformation. It was originally built in Norman times. Writing in 1951, Nicolaus Pevsner was uncertain about the dating and suggests that the Norman work has some Saxon features while the tower may be 13th or 15th century in date. It stands on the cliffs between Trevena and Tintagel Castle and is listed Grade I. The first church on the site was probably in the 6th century, founded as a daughter church of Minster. These are the only churches dedicated to the saint, though she is usually identified with Madryn, Princess of Gwent. The existing church may be late 11th or early 12th century. The tower is some 3 centuries later, and the most significant change since then was the restoration in 1870 by James Pearce St Alban. Later changes include moving the organ and a number of new stained glass windows. Many of these portray saints, including St Materiana, St George and St Piran. The font is Norman, rather crudely carved in Elven. There are 3 modern copies of old master paintings, and a Roman milestone. The tower has a peal of 6 bells, ranging in date from 1735 to 1945. An area of the churchyard was excavated in 1990-91 by the Cornwall Archaeological Unit. The parish war memorial stands at the western end of the churchyard and a modern churchyard cross near the south entrance. Select list of vicars since 1850. Richard Burnkins, Min. 1851 to 1894. Arthur Greig Chapman, 1894–1916. Archibald B. Blissard Barnes, 1920–1938. Arthur C. Canner, 1950–1976. David Rake, 1996–2008. Castle Chapel. There was a Norman chapel of St. Gilita at the castle, now in ruins, which was excavated in Raleigh Radford's excavations. It is a simple rectangular building, and the chancel is of a later date than the nave. Chapels at Trethevey and Trevena. At Trethevey is St. Piran's Chapel, and there was formerly another Anglican chapel at Treno. In the Middle Ages there was also a chapel of St. Denis at Trevena. The annual fair was therefore celebrated in the week of his feast day. From 1925 until 2008, part of the vicarage outbuildings were also in use as a chapel. The name commemorates the abbey in France which held the patronage of Tintagel during the Middle Ages, founded by Robert of Arbrissel. Methodist churches. The Methodist Church has chapels at Trevena and Amp, Bossany. Formerly there were more chapels of various Methodist sects, for example at Trinali and Trewormit. The Methodist cemetery is at Trewormit. Wesleyan Methodism in Tintagel began in 1807 at Trinali, and over the next 60 years gained many adherents, though divided among a number of sects. Chapels were built at Trevena in 1838 and Bossany in 1860. In the 1830s and 1840s, the Camelford Wesleyan Methodist Circuit, which included Tintagel, underwent secession by more than half the members to the Wesleyan Methodist Association. The various Methodist churches were united again by the agreements of 1907 and 1932. Mary Toms, a Bible Christian from Tintagel, evangelized parts of the Isle of Wight. Roman Catholic Church. St. Paul's Church, Tintagel has a 30,000-piece mosaic of the saint within its walls. Since January 2008, when the church celebrated its 40th anniversary, a modern-day version of Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper by local artist Nicholas John Ross has hung above the main altar in the church. It has made international headlines due to its use of modern clothing and local people as the apostles. People from many other countries also come to Tintagel to view the names of the babies who have been lost due to miscarriage, stillbirth or other cause. The names are recorded in the Miscarriage and Amp Infant Loss Memorial Book, which is kept at the church. Government and politics. For the purposes of local government, Tintagel is a civil parish and councillors are elected every 4 years. The principal local authority in this area is Cornwall Council, but until March 2009 the parish was in the area of North Cornwall District Council. Parish council minutes can be found on Tintagel web. From 1894 to 1974 the parish was in the Camelford Rural District. Geology, scenery and sea bathing. Geology and geography. The coastline around Tintagel is significant because it is composed of old Devonian slate. About a mile southwards from Tintagel towards Treno, the coastline was quarried extensively for this hard-wearing roofing surface. Quarries in and at Trebarworth and Trevena continued to be worked until the mid-20th century. Apart from the island, headlands on the coast include Willow Park and Start Point. The turquoise-green water around this coast is caused by the slate sand around Tintagel, which contains elements of copper. Strong sunlight turns the water a light turquoise-green color in warm weather. The rocks contain various metal ores in small amounts. A few of these were mined in the Victorian period. Though very near the coast, the hill of Kingdom.The is among the very few areas in Cornwall outside Bodmin Moor which exceeds 1,000 feet. At Trevena is the waterfall known as census.An in a wooded valley. The beach at Botany Haven is close by, and Tintagel Strand, just half an hour's walk south of Tintagel, is one of Cornwall's finer beaches. Boasting clear seas, golden sands, and superb surf, there is a small beach at Tintagel Haven immediately north of the castle. The voluntary life-saving club is based at Tintagel Strand and also has members from Boscastle, Camelford, etc. The cliffs from Backways Cove, south of Tintagel Strand, to Willow Park, just to the south of Boscastle, are part of the Tintagel Cliffs census.An, designated for both its maritime heaths and geological features. There are also 4 geological conservation review sites. Tintagel lies within the Cornwall area of outstanding natural beauty. Almost a third of Cornwall has AONB designation, with the same status and protection as a national park. Bird and plant life. The birds of the coast are well worth observing. In 1935, an anonymous writer mentions Willow Park as the scene of spectacular flocks of seabirds. Inland he describes the crows and falcons which frequent the district. EMS contributes, within easy reach of Tintagel, at least 385 varieties of flowers, 30 kinds of grasses, and 16 of ferns can be found. A happy hunting ground for botanists, and a list of 39 of the rarest is given. This bird is emblematic of Cornwall and is also said to embody the spirit of King Arthur. B.H. Rives mentions the razorbill as numerous at Tintagel and summarizes reports from earlier in the century. In 1942, another amateur botanist recorded 262 species of flowering plants at Tintagel. In 1991, a local bird keeper, John Hadwick, published Owl Light about his experiences keeping 10 owls and a buzzard. In the early days of the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, Charles Hambley was a correspondent for the Society. 100 years later, Harry Sandercock observed that even modern agricultural changes had not reduced the bird populations. Shipwreck. Trebarwith was the scene of the shipwreck of the Sarah Anderson, Indiana, 1886, but the most famous of the wrecks happened on the 20th of December 1893, at Lie Rock, when the bark Iota was driven against the cliff. A crew were able to get onto the rock, and apart from a youth of 14 were saved by 4 men. The story is told in verse in Musings on Tintagel and Its Heroes by Joseph Brown, 1897. The youth was buried in Tintagel churchyard and the grave is marked by a wooden cross. National Trust properties. These include the old post office, Trevena, and fine stretches of the cliffs along the coast including Glebe Cliff, Barris Nose and Penhallock Point. The coastal footpaths include part of the Southwest Coast Path. Hotels. The most notable of the hotels is the King Arthur's Castle Hotel, an enterprise of Sir Robert Harvey and opened in 1899. The architect was Sylvanus Trevena. It was originally intended as the terminus hotel for a planned branch railway line from Camelford that was never built. The hotel stands alone on land previously known as Fire Beacon. The hotel was built in 1896. The front has batted walls, a central entrance tower rising to 5 stories and projecting 4-story corner towers. The towers have machicolations and rise above the 3 stories of the rest of the building. The Great Hall on the first floor is designed around a replica of the Winchester Round Table and has Romanesque arcades with Italian marble piers. In November 2010, an exposé of the hotel's business practices was broadcast by the BBC television programme Inside Out Southwest. At Trevena, the Warncliffe Hotel, which has now been converted into flats, the Ale Knock cross stands in the grounds. It is named after the Earl of Warncliffe, who was the largest landowner in the parish until his holdings were sold at the beginning of the 20th century. Opposite the Warncliffe is the former Tintagel Hotel, once commonly known as Fry's Hotel. This was the terminus for coaches in the days before the railway to Camelford Station, and stands on the site of the medieval chapel of St Denis. Near Dunderhole Point on Glebe Cliff stands a building from the former slate quarry. This has been used as Tintagel Youth Hostel for many years. Social and cultural life. Social and sporting activities and associations. The social hall established by Mrs. Ruth Homan and the Old School in 4th Street have been the chief meeting places during most of the 20th century. Both the Women's Institute and the football and cricket teams are well supported. Tintagel A.F.C. were champions of Cornwall in 1955-56 and have been in existence over 100 years. The most notable player was Harry Cann, who was goalkeeper for Plymouth Argyle F.C. Until the 1930s there were 2 golf courses and a few tennis courts. Neither golf course reopened in the post-war period. Camelford Rugby Football Club was formed in 2008 and plays its home matches at Park Tremaine. Tintagel Choir. The Tintagel Orpheus Male Voice Choir was founded in 1926 by Jack Thomas, a Welshman who worked at Trevena Quarry. The choir has rehearsed weekly and performed frequently ever since. Literary associations. Tintagel is used as a locus for the Arthurian mythos by the poet Alfred Lord Tennyson in the poem Idylls of the King and Algernon. Charles Swinburne's Tristram of Lyonesse is one of the versions of the Tristan and Isolde legends, where some of the events are set at Tintagel. Another version is Thomas Hardy's The Famous Tragedy of the Queen of Cornwall at Tintagel in Lyonesse, a one-act play which was published in 1923. Hardy and his first wife visited Tintagel on various occasions. She drew a sketch of the inside of the church as it was about 1867. Robert Stephen Hawker's poem about the bells of Forbury refers also to those of Tintagel, but more notable is his one on the quest for the Sangreal. The novelist Dinah Craig visited Tintagel in 1883 and published an informative account of her journey through Cornwall the following year. William Howard's visit is quite different. His account is called A Daydream at Tintagel. Relatively few works of fiction have Tintagel as a setting. These include Anthony Trollope's short story Malachi's Cove and the Williamsons' epistolary novel set in Silver, 1909. Ernest George Henham was a novelist resident in Devon who used the pseudonym John Trevena for many of his books. It is probable that the surname he chose was derived from the original name for Tintagel, though his writings are concerned mainly with Devon. Tintagel features prominently in Edith Wharton's final unfinished novel, The Buccaneers. The book's protagonist, Nan Street George, meets her future husband, the Duke of Tintagel, while exploring the ruins of Tintagel Castle. Wharton styled the characters as Duke and Duchess of Tintagel, while Tintagel actually lies within the Duchy of Cornwall. In the novel, the Duke and Duchess live in a new fictional Tintagel Castle, built in approximately the late 18th century. Tintagel was the venue for the Ghost Carno in 1964. Musical associations. Location filming. Arnold Bax was inspired to compose his symphonic poem Tintagel after a visit to the village. Edward Elgar also composed while on a visit to Tintagel. The film Knights of the Round Table had some sequences filmed near Tintagel Castle with local people as extras. This was in 1953, though it was not released until 1954. Some other filming has been carried out in Tintagel, e. G. Malachi's Cove at Trevena. The exterior of the Camelot Castle Hotel was used to portray Dry Seward's asylum in the 1979 film Dracula, starring Laurence Olivier and Donald Pleasence. Notable people: the Earls and Dukes of Cornwall were never resident at Tintagel, though a few of them are known to have visited. From 1552 to 1832, Tintagel was a parliamentary borough, sending 2 members to the House of Commons. These included Sir Francis Drake, Sir Simon Harcourt and James Stuart Wortley, 1st Baron Warncliffe. During the same period there were also mayors of the borough, of whom the best known is William Wade. Contemporaries of Mayor Wade were the Rev. Arthur Wade and Charles Chilcott. The Rev. R.B. Kinsman was also honorary constable of the castle. During the 19th century, Tintagel was visited by many notable writers, including Robert Stephen Hawker, Charles Dickens, Alfred Lord Tennyson, Thomas Hardy, and the mystic philosopher Rudolf Steiner. It was also the occasional residence of John Douglas Cook, founder-editor of the Saturday Review, who was buried at Tintagel. He bought Trevena House as an occasional residence. It later became the front part of King Arthur's Hall. Henry George White, the village schoolmaster for many years, was also a prolific amateur painter. Harry Cann was a footballer who played for Plymouth Argyle. The Very Rev. Clifford Piper, Dean of Moray, Ross and Caithness, was born at Tintagel.